Anyone online? I don't know why I'm asking that. Anyone? Okay. Before I get back to reading the text, and we're starting on page 11, I'm going to ask a question. Does everybody remember what the fivefold comparison is? Because it's going to be discussed in the opening of the eyes, and it's part of this Go Show. And remember the fivefold comparison? It's how Nietzsche qualifies.
I know that, but maybe I forgot the 普通相对.
Non-Buddhist Buddhist teachings are superior to non-Buddhist teachings. Mahayana is provisional Mahayana is superior to Hinayana. True Mahayana is superior to provisional Mahayana. What's the word that I'm looking for? The essential teaching, the essential half, the last half of the Lotus Sutra is superior to the theoretical teaching in the first half. And then the Buddhism of the sowing is superior to the Buddhism of the harvest. Those are the five. That's the fivefold comparison. I won't. I'll go ahead and read it because I want it on record for this conversation. Fivefold comparison. 5 successive levels of comparison set forth by Nietzsche in the opening of the eyes to demonstrate the superiority of his teaching of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo over all other teachings. 1. Buddhism is superior to non-Buddhist teachings. Nietzsche takes up Confucianism and Brahmanism and concludes that these non-Buddhist religions are not as profound as Buddhism in that they do not reveal the causal law of life that permeates the three existences of past, present, and future. 2. Mahayana Buddhism is superior to Hinayana Buddhism. Hinayana Buddhism is the teaching for persons of the two vehicles or voice hearers and cause awakened ones who aim at personal emancipation. Its ultimate goal is to put an end to the cycle of rebirth in the threefold world by eliminating all earthly desires. It is called Hinayana, lesser vehicle, because it saves only a limited number of people. In contrast, Mahayana Buddhism is the teaching for bodhisattvas who aim at both personal enlightenment and the enlightenment of others. It is called Mahayana, great vehicle, because it can lead many people to enlightenment. In this sense, the Mahayana teachings are superior to the Hinayana teachings. 3. The true Mahayana is superior to provisional Mahayana. Here, true Mahayana means the Lotus Sutra, while provisional Mahayana indicates the Mahayana teachings that, according to Tentai's system of classification, were expounded before the Lotus Sutra. In the provisional Mahayana teachings, the people of the two vehicles, women and evil persons, are excluded from the possibility of attaining enlightenment. In addition, Buddhahood is attained only by advancing through progressive stages of bodhisattva practice over incalculable kalpas. In contrast, the Lotus Sutra reveals that all people have the Buddha nature inherently and that they can attain Buddhahood immediately by realizing that nature. Furthermore, the provisional Mahayana teachings assert that Shakyamuni attained enlightenment for the first time in India and do not reveal his original attainment of Buddhahood in the remote past, nor do they reveal the principle of the mutual possession of the 10 worlds, as does the Lotus Sutra. For this reason, the true Mahayana teachings of the Lotus Sutra are superior to the provisional Mahayana teachings, everything that preceded it. Right? Okay, 4. The essential teaching, this is what I was grasping for. The essential teaching of the Lotus Sutra is superior to the theoretical teaching of the Lotus Sutra. The last 14 chapters is superior to the first 14 chapters. The theoretical teaching consists of the first 14 chapters of the Lotus Sutra and the Essential Sutra, and the essential teaching, the latter 14 chapters. The theoretical teaching takes the form of preaching by Shakyamuni, who is still viewed as having attained enlightenment during his lifetime in India. In contrast, the essential teaching takes the form of preaching by Shakyamuni, who has discarded his transient status and revealed his true identity as the Buddha who attained Buddhahood in the remote past. The revelation implies that all the 10 worlds of ordinary people are eternal, just as the Buddhas are, and confirms that Buddhahood is an ever-present potential of human life. For these reasons, the essential teaching is superior to the theoretical teaching. Everybody understands, right? The Buddhism 5, the fifth of the fivefold comparison. The Buddhism of sowing is superior to the Buddhism of the harvest. Nichiren established this comparison based on the concept of sowing, maturing, and harvesting that Tentai set forth in the words and phrases of the Lotus Sutra. In the profound meaning of the Lotus Sutra, Tentai cites the process by which the Buddha teaches, described in the parable of the Phantom City, 7th chapter of the Lotus Sutra, as well as the relationship of the Buddha and his disciples from the remote past explained in the Lifespan, 16th chapter of the Sutra. All these ideas illustrate how the Buddha begins teaching his disciples by sowing the seeds of Buddhahood in their lives, helps those seeds mature, and finally harvests their fruit by leading them to the final stage of enlightenment or Buddhahood. The Lotus Sutra describes this process as ranging over countless kalpas. The sutra does not, however, explain the nature of these original seeds, though it is clear that the seed of Buddhahood is essential for attaining Buddhahood. Nichiren identifies the seed as Nam-myoho Renge-kyo and states that it can be found only in the depths of the Lifespan chapter. By implanting this seed in one's life, one can attain Buddhahood. From this viewpoint, Nichiren identifies his teaching as the Buddhism of sowing, the teaching aimed at implanting the seed of Buddhahood, and Shakyamuni's as the Buddhism of the harvest, the teaching aimed at harvesting the fruit of enlightenment born from the seed planted in the remote past. He explains that Shakyamuni appeared in India in order to harvest the fruit of Buddhahood born from the seed he had sown and caused to mature in the lives of his disciples until that time. The people of the latter day of the law, who have no such seed implanted in their lives, cannot harvest its fruit. Nichiren states, now in the latter day of the law, neither the Lotus Sutra nor the other sutras lead to enlightenment. Only Nam-myoho Renge-kyo can do so. Okay, so that's the fivefold comparison Nichiren makes in the opening of the eyes, qualifying that his Buddhism of the sowing is a different teaching, and it's the appropriate teaching for the latter day of the law, and it's the only teaching that can allow one to attain Buddhahood in their present form. Okay? So we go on, we continue from page 11, where it says, opening our eyes to Nichiren's perseverance and compassion. All right? And I'm so glad you're here to get started on this, man, because this is only going to get better. This is a great lecture. It's a wonderful lecture. It's a deep and intense lecture. I'm excited that you're here for it. Thank you for coming home, Rio. I would like to quote another related passage. Pardon me, before I'm going to do that, to make sure we remember the most salient points of what we discussed last week, I'm just going to go back to the last paragraph on page 10. It says, the above 2 points, which if you scanned above, you'd know what I'm talking about. The clarification of the correct teaching, which is the teaching of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo in the latter day of the law, the Buddhism of sowing, that's the correct teaching. Okay? And the importance of making a vow, which I've discussed ad infinitum, right? Comprise the backbone of the opening of the eyes. I will discuss them in more detail later during the course of these lectures. All right? So understand, those are the two most salient issues of the Gosho itself. He says, now, opening our eyes to Nichiren's perseverance and compassion on page 11. I would like to quote another related passage. When it comes to understanding, this is the quote, when it comes to understanding the Lotus Sutra, I have only a minute fraction of the vast ability that Tentai and Dingyo possess. But as regards my ability to endure persecution and the wealth of my compassion for others, I believe they would hold me in awe. Continuing with the lecture. We could also interpret this passage, which so many of us have engraved in our hearts, as the call to open your eyes to Nichiren. Here, Nichiren humbly states that his understanding of the Lotus Sutra is inferior to that of Tentai and Dingyo. But in reality, is it? No. But in the opening of the eyes, as I noted earlier, he reveals the supreme wisdom to grasp the essential law that enables all people of the latter day to attain enlightenment. Where was that? It was hidden in the depths of the 16th chapter, okay, of the Lifespan chapter, that enables all people of the latter day to attain enlightenment. This essential law of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo is the ultimate teaching for actualizing the mutual possession of the 10 worlds and manifesting the world of Buddhahood in one's own life. So what does he say there? This essential law of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo is the ultimate teaching for attaining Buddhahood in one's present form. right? While explaining this teaching is itself difficult, sharing it with others and enabling them to demonstrate it in their own lives are even more so difficult. All right? So when we have difficulty accomplishing that, we shouldn't be confused by that or feel that we failed in any way. That's already an acknowledged fact. Because as I've told you, it's not your preaching as much as it is their fortune to receive the preaching and perceive it. Do you understand? All right, so he says, what we have then is a struggle that no one had ever undertaken before in the history of Buddhism. An evil age, the difficult to believe essential law, because what did he already say about difficult to believe and difficult to understand?
Yeah.
The Daishonians qualified that as for the basis for the essential teaching in the latter day, but also the whole Lotus Sutra was qualified as such by Shakyamuni, right? So he says, an evil age, the difficult to believe essential law, and an ordinary person. Again, don't forget, Nichiren wasn't, even though he was a priest without a temple. He wasn't a priest that was actually, that had precepts. He wasn't a part of any sect. All right? An ordinary person who was determined to propagate that law. All right? It was inevitable, therefore, that persecution would follow. Nichiren, while enduring one intense persecution after another, revealed the world of Buddhahood in his own life as an ordinary human being, not as a supernatural priest or supernatural religious figure, as a person just like us. All right? He offered his own life and practice as an example. It's just like what I said last week. Do you remember? That was the purpose of his advent, was to be the living example for everything we would have to deal with to replicate and receive the same result. He offered his own life and practice as an example and established the means by which to spread this essential law to all people. Everybody's with me, right? That's the Gosho, that's all his clarifications, that's all of his preaching in his lifetime. The driving force that enabled him to carry through and complete this struggle was his vow. And on an even deeper level, his boundless compassion for all living beings. Because to sustain that vow, you must have deep and legitimate compassion. If the vow isn't based on compassion, it's just words. It's just an exercise. Do you understand? Everybody with me?
Yes.
All right. And so again, that ninth world of Bodhisattva is the part of that's playing in the nine world aspect of your life with your Buddha nature becoming active when you're able to act on that vow. It's not pure 10th world, right? Okay, so his boundless compassion for all living beings. It is because of this immense compassion that we regard the Daishonin as the Buddha of the latter day. Nichiren himself indicates that compassion lies at the very heart of Shakabuku, the struggle to propagate the correct teaching in order to liberate people from fundamental suffering. He thus declares, I, Nichiren, am sovereign, teacher, and father and mother to all the people of Japan. As I said last week, he's not being arrogant in making that statement because his attainment opens the way for all other people to attain enlightenment in their present form through the Buddhism of the sowing, through his teaching of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Everybody's with me, right?
Right.
This is the conclusion of the opening of the eyes. All right? He's explaining that's the purpose of the opening eyes. What is the correct teaching? Okay? And why does the correct teacher get hit with all kinds of obstacles and difficulties? Those are the two aspects. Is the conclusion of the opening of the eyes, and also a call urging us to open your eyes to Nichiren's compassion. Okay? Because it's his compassion that's the real representative example of the correct attitude in faith. We can replicate a lot of actions, but if we don't understand what their source is, what their basis is, then we're parroting, we're mimicking, we're imitating. We're not awakening the original state that's actually supposed to be the source of this compassion, as it was in Nichiren's life. Do you understand? The Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, thus come one aspect of our life that exists in our life, is for us to uncover. All right? That doesn't happen without a great deal of effort. Quoting One of the passages I have just cited, President Toda maintained that striving to help people attain enlightenment and to realize a fundamental inner transformation in the lives of all humankind represents the Buddha's work. And he called on his fellow members to devote themselves to this challenge, enabling all people to become Buddhas, elevating the character of all people to something of supreme value. This is what it means to carry out the thus come one's work. So, what does he say the purpose of Shakyamuni is? The purpose of Shakabuku is? Is it to grow a larger organization?
No, to
Help all
help people become
Everybody become Buddhists. All right? In the opening of the eyes, the Daishonin writes, when it comes to understanding the Lotus Sutra, I have only a minute fraction of the vast ability that Tentai and Dingyo possessed. But as regards my ability to endure persecution and the wealth of my compassion for others, I believe they would hold me in awe. The profound meaning behind this passage is the Daishonin's commitment to which he gave his entire life to make it possible for all human beings to attain Buddhahood. Is everybody clear on that, right? But how's he going to do that? He can only do that if his followers, if the bodhisattvas of the earth come along and take the teaching and then incorporate it in their lives to create actual Ichinen Sanzen as the actual proof that his teaching is real. Understand? He didn't do it he did it by virtue of what he did, again, like I said, at Tatsunakuchi that night. That actual Ichinen Sanzen, that Hoshaku Kimpan, okay, was in effect the recipe for Kosen Rufu, period. His followers will make their advent, but it's by virtue of his followers making their advent that his will is actualized. Okay? We're the ones that create Kosen Rufu. Okay? We can't do it without his teaching, but it's our efforts that actually established that widespread propagation that was his vow. Do you understand?
Yes.
All right. Because we've taken a vow to uphold his vow. That's what our vow is. All right? When we say make everyone equal to ourselves, are we talking, do I want everybody like me? No, I want everybody to be like the Buddha nature that I have, to have the Buddha nature that I have. That's pure and without any circumstance that I might feel guilty about later, making them equal to me. All right. Although I and my disciples made, pardon me, where am I? I'm over here. The profound meaning behind this passage is the Daishonin's commitment to which he gave his entire life to make it possible for all human beings to attain Buddhahood. This is a vivid example of the thus come one's work. My fellow members of the Soka Gakkai, we too must carry out this work, this exact work. How then should we strive to enable all people to obtain the same state of Buddhahood? With his vision of universal enlightenment and the inner transformation of all humankind, Nichiren brought forth the power of endurance in the face of persecution and the power of compassion in order to establish and propagate the entity of the law. Inheriting Nichiren's spirit, the Soka Gakkai has, since the time of First President Tanesaburo Makaguchi, embraced Nichiren Buddhism as the teaching for transforming reality and energetically advanced the struggle to lead humankind toward genuine happiness. What does that say? What is he really referring to there, without being redundant and saying again the way he's already said it previously? Let me read that paragraph again. With his vision of universal enlightenment and the inner transformation of all humankind, Nichiren brought forth the power of endurance in the face of persecution and the power of compassion in order to establish and propagate the entity of the law. Inheriting Nichiren's spirit, the Soka Gakkai has, since the time of his first president, Tanesaburo Makaguchi, embraced Nichiren Buddhism as the teaching for transforming reality and energetically advanced the struggle to lead humankind toward genuine happiness. What did that just say? What do you catch in that that's significant? Because he is saying something that's very true and that's absolutely significant to what we're discussing here. This lineage that I've tried to teach you, okay, that's really a lineage that has some departures, okay? We're talking about starting with Nichiren, obviously, but then the Nikko, the Fuji school, Nikko, and then Nichikan, okay? And then the priesthood to the degree that they helped support the formation of the Soka Gakkai. For instance, that retired priest that helped put the Gosho Zenshu together so that everybody could read the Gosho. But that was at the insistence and the impetus of Josei Toda, right? Okay? So what's he talking about here? He's talking about the fact that for the 700 years that included Nichiren's lifetime, no one had ever gone out and done widespread propagation. To Nesaburo Makaguchi, with the creation of the teachers thing, the Gokyukai or whatever it was, okay, they actually went out and tried to establish new members. This wasn't just, by the way, are there any Nichiren Buddhists that happen to be teachers? If you're a Nichiren Buddhist, no. They went out to teachers and introduced them to Nichiren Buddhism. Do you understand? They did shakabuku. They started the process of widespread propagation. Okay? And they also qualified the teaching that the Daishonin had left as one based on action and one based on daily life, not one based on theoretical, religious attitudes and perspectives. This was overcoming problems. This was bringing forth the power of your own life and gaining benefit. That was the practice that they established. That was not a practice that existed within the Hokkaido. Okay? Do you know who the Hokkaido is? The lay believers that supported the Nichiren Shoshu Temple. The original lay people that supported Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Do you understand? The people that preceded President Toda, President Makaguchi, and the Soka Gakkai. Don't forget, it had been a generational teaching. There were temples. There were Nichiren temples. There were Nichiren Shoshu temples, okay? They were always supported generationally. Families were members of those temples. They didn't do shakabuku really per se. They didn't go out and go to strangers. The same family. You know, you would receive your dad's, you just take your dad's gohonzon when your dad died. Okay? New gohonzons were not really, there was no mass need for lots of gohonzon because there were lots of new believers. It was a static, it was a maintenance process. It wasn't the exponentiality that's involved in Kozen Rufu. Kozen Rufu calls for exponentiality. Everybody understands I discussed that, right? It has to be an ever-increasing number for Kozen Rufu to be achieved. Right. It can't be a static sustaining. This is why I can't slow down. I can't speak more slowly. Sorry. Do you understand? Yeah. Okay, and what he's talking about here, let me paraphrase the paragraph again. With this vision of universal enlightenment and inner transformation of all humankind, what's that Nichiren's talking about? Nichiren's talking about the Buddhist and the Soin. He's saying, with this vision of universal enlightenment, everybody's got the Buddha nature, right? And inner transformation, actual Ichinen Sanzen, manifesting that Buddha nature, not theoretically perceiving it and understanding that it's there, actualizing that, okay? Right. Nichiren brought forth the power through those two aspects, okay? Nichiren brought forth the power of endurance in the face of persecution, a power that derives its source from faith, okay? And the power of compassion, also a power that derives its source from faith. Do you understand? All right? To establish and propagate the entity of the law, the Gohonzon itself. Right? Are you with me? Yes. Yeah. Inheriting Nichiren's spirit, because nobody else had, the Soka Gakkai has done that. That's why they got in trouble with the priesthood. That's why we're not associated with the priesthood anymore. We made the decision that the priesthood wasn't a practicing in accord with the teachings that we had actualized in our own lives. It wasn't theoretically validated. It was validated through the growth of the Soka Gakkai. It was validated through the benefits of the members. Nobody could say that's not the way it is. The lives of the people were proving the teaching to be correct. Do you understand?
Yes.
That's very significant. It wasn't theoretical. It wasn't on the basis of okos with lots of doctrine and lots of dogma. It was based on, are you advancing in your life? Let me encourage you to do so. Okay? It was a hierarchical structure of people encouraging one another. Older people in faith encouraging younger people in faith. Do you follow?
Yes.
All right. So there's a reason why it's now this Oko philosophy. I struggle with this so much. Is this correct? Is this slander? Are we leaving the priesthood? Is that okay? So just for you to know, I pondered that like a son of a gun for a long time. And what came was all the answers that make me very clear. No problem at all. Follow President Ikeda. That's what my life told me to do, and that wasn't where I started. All right? So I'm encouraging you that this is the reason why there's no problem. I'm explaining to you now, without it being like I'm Mr. Soka Gakkai, because you know I'm not. I'm telling you right now, everything that they're saying is true and why it's true. And you can go look it up if you doubt what I'm saying. All right? And I'm not indoctrinated to believe this because I'm Joe Gakkai. I'm objectively viewing history and, fact and my perception of the Gosho and my wisdom as I perceived it and requested it from the Gohonzon from lots of Daimoku. Okay, I would not lead you down this path if I wasn't already very clear that it's not a dead end. All right, so do you understand what he's saying? Embrace Nichiren Buddhism as the teaching for transforming reality, changing poison into medicine, all right, and energetically advancing the struggle to lead humankind toward genuine Kosen Rufu. That's what that all is. That's what we're supposed to be doing as Soka Gakkai members, based on compassion for the equality of all people, not for a hierarchical, get a bigger organization, get more Gokuyo, all that kind of stuff, right? This is about Kosen Rufu. Yes. Compassion and trust for the people are the foundation. That's why he's writing this book. So when you see something other than this occurring, you know, that is what President Ikeda taught. All right? We can thus identify a variety of meanings for the phrase opening the eyes of the writing's title, but open your eyes to Nichiren seems to be the key message. This call is based on a spirit of compassion and trust for the people. It could also be expressed as open your eyes to the people, because there's no separation between Nichiren and the people. Nichiren Buddhism is the Buddhism of the oneness of mentor and disciple, that inseparability between us and Nichiren. Through his own life, Nichiren established the path by which ordinary people of the latter day could attain Buddhahood in their present form, and he taught that path to his disciples. This is the Buddhism of the sowing that we're all practicing, that allows us to have actual Ichinen sons and manifest in our lives. He says, although I and my disciples may encounter various difficulties, if we do not harbor doubts in our hearts, we have Mugiwashi, we will as a matter of course attain Buddhahood in our present form, in this lifetime. Do not have doubts simply because heaven does not lend you protection. We've already discussed why, right? Do not be discouraged because you did not enjoy an easy and secure existence in this life. This is what I have taught my disciples morning and evening, and yet they begin to harbor doubts and abandon their faith. All right? Everybody's with me, right? It continues. Foolish men are likely to forget the promises they have made when the crucial moment comes. Yeah. The implication here is that the path of the oneness of mentor and disciple of Nichiren and his followers comes into being when both have faith that is free of doubt. Both have the same Mugiwashi. What does that mean then? When both have acquired the same mind, right? When we're able to achieve the same faith, the same Mugiwashi, doubt-free faith that Nichiren encourages us to. That's not natural. That's supernatural. Okay? That's my point. All right? So, he's saying that, and infused with the spirit of not begrudging one's life, which is the correct attitude that he taught us, right? That's the vow, right?
Yes.
So, So let me start again. The implication here is that the path of oneness of mentor and disciple of Nichiren and his followers comes into being when they have faith that is free of doubt and infused with the spirit of not begrudging one's life. So it's based on doubt-free faith, and it's based on the vow. Faith, as conceived by Nichiren, precludes doubt toward the power of the mystic law. Therefore, it is only natural that our Buddhist practice includes actively battling the devilish nature inherent in life, as well as external obstacles and devilish functions that act as negative influences. Another name for that is the devilish functions, the devil of the sixth heaven.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, everybody's with me, correct? Mm-hmm. And he assures us that if we join him in this struggle, Nichiren, we will realize the fruit or effect of attaining Buddhahood without fail in our present existence. This is because anyone can become one with the Daishonin in terms of his practices and virtues he constantly attained. The object of devotion, that's a quote from the observation, the object of devotion for observing the mind. That is the cause and effect of his enlightenment. This means that the call to open your eyes to Nichiren, which runs throughout this writing, is in fact based on a foundation of deep confidence in and respect for human beings. Okay? And the inseparable aspect that he realized and ascertained in his life that he understood is also a part of every other person's life. That there is no separation between himself and others. I would like to clearly state, therefore, that the significance of opening the eyes in this treatise, in addition to his call to open your eyes to Nichiren, lies in its fervent exhortations. Open your eyes to the human being and open your eyes to the people. Quit looking at them as common mortals. Perceive them as the Buddha. That's what they are. When you do that, you open up the capacity in your own life to perceive yourself correctly. It will generally be that way rather than the opposite. I perceive myself as the Buddha first. Oh, yeah, you guys are too. It's usually, oh, I see everybody else. Well, I guess that includes me too. Okay? A movement, page 13, a movement that seeks to enable all to reveal their Buddha nature. Essentially then, to correctly read the opening of the eyes is to recognize Nichiren Daishonin as our model for attaining Buddhahood in the latter days, something I've said several times so far, right? His life serves as the example for us. It's not some out there over your head, you could, superfluous thing, right? Serves as our model for attaining Buddhahood in the latter day, and as the Lord of teachings of the latter day of the law, who established the path for attaining Buddhahood by establishing the Buddhism of the sowing, by establishing the correct practice of chanting Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Do you understand? All right. Also, from the perspective of the Buddhism of the people, hidden in the depths of the Lotus Sutra, it could be said that to read the opening of the eyes is to base oneself on a profound respect and trust for human beings. All right? So what did he just say there? Also, from the perspective of the Buddhism of the people hidden in the depths of the Lotus Sutra, what does that mean? The Buddhism of the people hidden in the depths of the Lotus Sutra. To perceive the inherent Buddha nature in all others, all right? It could be said that to read the opening of the eyes correctly is to base oneself on a profound respect and trust for human beings. It's to read it correctly is to perceive the Buddha nature in all others. All right? Not theoretically, actually. When viewed in this way, where we can find a person who has truly read this treatise, when viewed in this way, where can we find a person who has truly read this treatise correctly? I feel sure that President Toda's wisdom and perceptive insights will shine brightly once again in that regard. In concluding the first section, the first lecture in this series, I would like to introduce another quote by my mentor. When reading the Daishonin's writings, even more than trying to understand the meaning of his words, God, this is so important. Let me say it again. when reading the Daishonen's writings, this is President Toda's guidance to us when we read the Gosho or we read anything that we're trying to ascertain doctrinal foundation for the thought process that's going through our head as we try to figure all this out. You're with me, right?
Yes.
When reading the Daishonen's writings, even more than trying to understand the meaning of his words, because, and why is that? Why is why is it even more than? There's something following that. It's because trying to understand the meaning of the words will forever become deeper and greater. You'll read the same words and your perception and understanding will always be advancing.
Yeah.
Okay? So rather than thinking you're going to get that in a first read, he said, rather than focusing so much on trying to understand exactly everything without any daimoku in front of the Gohonzon to perceive it correctly, he says, I seek to come into contact with the Buddha's immense compassion, his towering conviction, his ardent spirit to protect, save the people, and his single-minded, solemn commitment to Kosen Rufu. And what affected me was his fearlessness, his attitude, his not arrogance, but his, like, can't touch this. You know, his whole, like, confidence. His confidence is what, like, would get me. Every time I would read everything he's writing, it's like he would write it from the perspective of, if you can't grasp this ain't my problem. Try harder. You know, I'm not wrong. I'm not wrong. He would say it with such conviction, I never had a doubt that he was correct. Everything I read him say is like, okay, anybody that's talking like that, I'm sucking it up until it disproves itself. And by having that kind of faith, it never was able to disprove itself. It just immediately manifested power. All right? So, again, when reading the Daishonen's writing, even more than trying to understand the meaning of his words, I seek to come into contact with the Buddha's immense compassion, his towering conviction, his ardent spirit to protect and save the people, and his single-minded and solid commitment to Kosen Rufu, which means being able to read the Gosho, read the background before you start reading the Gosho, understand who he's writing to, and then be able to perceive the kind of context of expediency that he's going to get into in the depth of ABCD dogma shit. Okay? A lot of times he writes to the level, almost always, he writes to the level of the person that he's writing to. Okay? That's his level of compassion. All right? He's not strict about things. Right? Read Sairenbo if you want to get into strict. All right? Whenever I read the Daishonen's writings, his brilliant spirit, like the midsummer sun at noon, floods my heart. My chest feels as if it is filled with a giant ball of molten steel. Sometimes I feel like a scalding hot spring is gushing forth inside me, or as if a great earth-shaking waterfall is crashing over me. Or I just start crying. You know, I firmly believe that the spirit described here by President Toda, and that was me saying I'd just start crying, this wasn't President Toda. I firmly believe that the spirit described here by President Toda represents the Soka Gakkai's eternal guideline for reading the writings of Nichiren Daishonin. Reading his writings means coming into contact with the Daishonen's immense compassion and his philosophy for liberating all people from fundamental suffering, and is comparable to being irradiated by Nichiren's spirit for Kosen Rufu. As courageous bodhisattvas of the earth, let us build a network dedicated to opening the eyes of the people in order to bring light to the darkness and delusion that shrouds people's lives, and enable all to reveal their Buddha nature, to become Buddhas. The world is yearning for the humanistic Buddhism of Nichiren Daishonin. Today, more and more people around the globe are turning their eyes to our great movement of peace, culture, and education. Okay, continuing on page 15 with chapter 1. That was the end of the introduction. The three virtues, sovereign, teacher, and parent, establishing the Buddhism of the people through compassion and enduring persecution. Please note that header. The three virtues of sovereign, teacher, and parent, establishing the Buddhism of the people through compassion and enduring persecution. It's a continuum of what he just left us with in the introduction. There are three categories of people that all human beings should respect. This is a quote from the Gosho. By the way, I'm just going to be reading. This is from the Opening of the Eyes. First from page 220. There are three categories of people that, and this is, I believe, opens the Gosho itself. There are three categories of people that all human beings should respect. They are the sovereign, the teacher, and the parent. There are three types of doctrines that are to be studied. They are Confucianism, Brahmanism, and Buddhism. From page 220. Going on to page 221. Quotes. These teachings set forth by sages and worthies in China are theories that are cleverly argued, but that fail to take cognizance of either the past or the future. Mystery, as we have seen, means darkness or obscurity, and it is for this reason that it is called mystery. It is a theory that deals with matters only in terms of the present. From page 221. From page 221 also. Confucius declared that there were no worthies or sages in his country, but that in the land to the west there was one named Buddha who was a sage. What did I qualify you guys? What's the difference between a sage and a worthy? A sage doesn't need to be taught. A sage can perceive things, okay, and create teachings. A worthy is someone that's able to receive teachings and perceive them correctly, and then teach them from having been taught them. Do you understand? Okay. One named Buddha who was a sage. In other words, one who was capable of bringing forth his own teachings. All right? This indicates that non-Buddhist texts such as Confucianism should be regarded as a first step toward Buddhist doctrine. They're an expedient means. Confucius first taught propriety in music so that when the Buddhist scriptures were taught to China, the Buddhist concepts of the precepts, meditation, and wisdom, the three types of learning, could be more readily grasped. He taught the ideals of ruler and minister so that the distinction between superior and subordinate could be made clear. He taught the ideal of parenthood so that the importance of filial piety could be appreciated. And he explained the ideal of the teacher so that people might learn to follow. From page 221. Going on to page 222, quote, in their skill and depth of understanding, they, the 6 non-Buddhist teachers of India, who preceded Shakyamuni. You understand that, right? All right? Yes, everybody knows who the 6 ascetics were, right? Surpassed anything known in Confucianism. Okay? Now, do you know who these 6 guys in India were? One of them was the founder of Jainism. Another one was, they were a bunch of new religions. One of them was a total hedonism, where there was no cause and effect. Certain things were, one believed that there was cause without effect. One believed that there was effect without cause. So 6 guys that had things that they had thought up on their own. All right? Shakyamuni actually studied under them, several of them, prior to his attainment of Buddhahood under the Bodhi tree. Several of them were he went back and became his first disciples. Okay? So, he says, this 6 non-Buddhist teachers of India surpassed anything known in Confucianism. They were able to perceive 2, 3, or even 7 existences. These guys were all spooky dudes. They were doing kind of magic kind of shit, right? All right? Or a period of 80,000 kalpas into the past. And they likewise knew what would happen 80,000 kalpas in the future. Who knows? As the fundamental principle of their doctrine, some of these schools, here we go, taught that causes produce effects. Others taught that causes do not produce effects, while still others taught that causes both do and do not produce effects. So they were ignorant to the real law of cause and effect. All right? They were ignorant of Renge, the ultimate law of causality. All right? Such were the fundamental principles of these non-Buddhist schools. In other words, they did not understand the simultaneity of cause and effect. Are you with me?
Yes.
All right. That's page 222. Continuing on 222. But not a single person who adheres to these 95 types of higher or lower non-Buddhist teachings ever escapes from the cycle of birth and death. And since no one ever escapes from the cycle of birth and death by embracing them, that's why we don't give a shit what they are, really. Okay? That's why I don't have to get into what are the 95 types of higher and lower non-Buddhist. Again, they're non-Buddhist teachings. We already know from the fivefold comparison, where do they fit? They're below Buddhism, automatically. Understand? All right. So, from the cycle of birth and death, those who follow teachers of the better sort will, after 2 or 3 rebirths, fall into the evil paths, while those who follow evil teachers will fall into the evil paths in their very next rebirth. So he's saying they do not lead anywhere. All right? Anywhere that you want to go. Okay? Their effect will wear off so quickly that it wasn't worth the effort that you made to try to understand or perceive what they're talking about. Are you with me?
So, he was taught, Buddha was taught by these people.
And then rejected their teachings to become their teacher after he attained enlightenment under the Bodhi tree after 40 days and 40 nights.
He was there to show them
He
that
was
they
there
were
basically, he was a Brahmin prince. Okay? He said Confucianism, Brahmanism, which was a royal ruling class, but it was also a religious doctrine, understand? And the Brahmins were the highest caste. Brahmanism is the entire caste system, right? So they believed in the untouchables too, right? So, what did he leave? When he left, when he decided to quit being a married prince, talking about Shakyamuni now, what did he reject? Brahmanism. He left the household where he was already a prince. He was already a Brahmin. He left Brahmanism to go try and figure out, okay, birth, old age, sickness, and death. Remember, he saw the lady giving birth at one, and sickness, and okay, got it, right? He ditched Brahmanism. He ditched his parental, his familial, his ruling class religion to go and try and figure out why was there birth, old age, sickness, and death. These were the 4 sufferings that he decided he was going to devote his life to try and figure out how to overcome for the sake of everyone else. That's why he left his wife and child. That's why he renounced his kingdom. He was a prince. He was going to inherit from his father. He said, later, I'm leaving. I'm splitting. Where did he go? He went off to go try and figure things out. As he went to go try to figure things out, he met some people and said, I figured them out. He studied through it. He learned all meditative processes. This is where he started the whole, deprivation and fasting and all that other crap that's part of Hinayana Buddhism that we don't give a shit about because it was actually an extension of these aesthetic practices. Do you follow?
Yeah.
All right? It's totally rejected in Mahayana. All right? The only reason it still exists is because people have not completely let go of it. All right? They haven't let go of all the other things that he said were stages to progress. All right? So, that's what we're talking about here. All right? So, he's saying, but since none of these people, none of these teachings lead you to escaping the cycle of birth and death. What does that mean? How do you escape the cycle of birth and death?
No way.
Yeah, no. You can, okay, yes, from the standpoint of extinguishment. But when you attain Buddhahood, okay, you don't transmigrate with change in advance or with cause and limitations, whatever it is, right? You're in a separate kind of transmigrative process that returns lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. Do you understand? He's already qualified these. You only escape a couple of them. You can escape for a cycle or 2, right? Falling into the right. So there's different levels of validity, but none of them allow you to attain Buddhahood. That's what that statement's saying. None of them lead to Buddhahood, is what that statement is saying. But not a single person who adheres to these 95 types of higher or lower non-Buddhist teachings ever escapes from the cycle of birth and death. Those who follow teachers of the better sort will, after 2 or 3 rebirths, fall into the evil paths, while those who follow evil teachers will fall into the evil paths in their very next rebirth. And yet, the main point of these non-Buddhist teachings constitute the important means of entry into Buddhism. Thirdly, following Confucianism on page 222. Now we're on page 223 with this quote. Thirdly, following Confucianism and Brahmanism, we come to Buddhism. One should know that the world-honored one of great enlightenment, Shakyamuni Buddha, is a great leader for all living beings, a great eye for them, a great bridge, a great helmsman, a great field of good fortune. The four sages and the three aesthetics of the Confucian and Brahmanical scriptures and teachings are referred to as sages, but in fact they are no more than ordinary people who have not yet been able to eradicate the three categories of illusion. They are referred to as wise men, but in fact they are no more than infants who cannot understand the principles of cause and effect. With their teachings for a ship, could one ever cross the sea of the sufferings of birth and death? With their teachings for a bridge, could one ever escape from the maze of the six paths? But the Buddha, our great teacher, has advanced beyond even transmigration with change and advance, which is transmigration in world 7, 8, and 9, correct? All right, let alone transmigration with differences and limitations, which is transmigration in the first 6. He has wiped out even the very root of fundamental darkness. What's that saying then? He's attained enlightenment. He's attained Buddhahood. He's attained the 10th world, right? Let alone the illusions of thought and desire that are as minor as branches and leaves. Do you understand what he said there then? He said that for everything that all these cool guys, these what was it, the 5 and the 7? How did he qualify that?
The 6 Buddhist teachers.
The 4 sages and the 3 aesthetics. And I'm not going to go back in and qualify who they are because it doesn't matter. Just realize they're historical people. If you wanted to know who they were, you can figure them out. Yeah. They're expedient means, so it really doesn't matter. I wouldn't waste my time on it. They're references. Okay? He's saying, though, they couldn't do crap as it relates to actually changing your karma. Okay? But the Buddha is the great eye, the bridge, the helmsman, that's the ship, right? And the field of good fortune. So that's why he's saying, but the Buddha, our great teacher, has advanced let alone, he has wiped out even the very, let alone, pardon me. Okay, with their teachings, you couldn't use him as a bridge. He is the bridge. You can never escape from the maze of the six paths. He allows you to, do you understand what he's saying there then? Mm-hmm. Okay, let me get off of that then. Okay, I hate to do that, man. I'm going to read through to the first one. All right? The true sovereign, continuing on page 17. The true sovereign teacher and parent and the true causality of attaining Buddhahood. The main theme running throughout the opening of the eyes is that of the three virtues. This is clearly indicated in the Daishonen's opening lines. There are 3 categories of people that all human beings should respect. They are the sovereign, the teacher, and the parent. There are 3 types of doctrines that are also to be studied. They are Confucianism, Brahmanism, and Buddhism. He thus identifies the 3 virtues, those of sovereign, teacher, and parent, as qualities that all people should respect. In addition, the Daishonin identifies Confucianism, Brahmanism, and Buddhism as the philosophical and religious doctrines that people should study. By Confucianism, Brahmanism, and Buddhism, in this passage, he means the various teachings of China, including Confucianism and Taoism, the various non-Buddhist teachings of India, including Brahmanism, and of course the various teachings of Buddhism. This converts all of the principal strains of thought that had been transmitted to Japan in the Daishonen's day. So the point is that those 3 things are the juxtaposition that Nichiren is speaking from. He doesn't have Christianity added in as a thought process. He doesn't have Judaism. He doesn't have Islam. He doesn't have Rosicrucians or whatever. He doesn't have any other existing philosophy as the foundation that he's speaking from other than these 3. Do you understand? All right. The underlying focus of this treatise is to evaluate the world's major schools of thought and religion as known by Nichiren and Daishonin, and to qualify who should genuinely be revered by all humanity as the person possessing the 3 virtues, sovereign, teacher, and parent. What is the correct teaching? Right? The various gods, Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, sages, and worthies presented in these philosophies and religions are described as possessing one or more of the 3 virtues, and they have in fact been revered by many people. The Daishonin, however, focuses on the question of who possesses these 3 virtues. because only someone endowed with all three is suitable as an object of universal veneration and respect. You follow? In On Prayer, Nichiren writes, though one may be a parent if of humble station, one cannot at the same time assume the role of sovereign. And though one may be a sovereign, if one is also if not also a parent, one may inspire fear. And though one may be both a parent and a sovereign, one cannot be a teacher as well. The various Buddhas, other than Shakyamuni, since they are known as world-honored ones, may be regarded as sovereigns. But since they do not make their appearance in this Sahe world, they are not teachers. Makes sense. Nor do they declare that the living beings in it are all my children. Thus Shakyamuni alone, Buddha alone fulfills the three functions of sovereign, teacher, and parent, the three virtues. Here the Daishonin explains that all the various Buddhas expounded in the Buddhist scriptures, only Shakyamuni possesses the virtues of sovereign, teacher, and parent. You understand? Everybody with me? This assertion also holds true that when we investigate teachings outside of Buddhism. Nichiren Daishonin, discussing the philosophies and religions of ancient India and China in the opening of the eyes, notes that the various central deities such as the Hindu god Shiva and Vishnu, as well as the ideal rulers and the sages and worthies who have left behind these teachings, were said to possess one or more of the three virtues. None of them, however, were considered endowed with all three. In some cases, they may have been endowed with traits such as nobility, dignity, and strength, which correspond to the virtue of sovereign, but lack such qualities of the parent as compassion. Conversely, they may have compassion, but lack nobility. Also, some, while having nobility and compassion, do not demonstrate the virtue of teacher, because they do not expound a teaching that leads people to happiness. For this reason, especially, most sages and worthies are not endowed with all three virtues. In his discussions on the virtues of sovereign, teacher, and parent, in terms of Confucianism, Brahmanism, and Buddhism, and as it unfolds, the Daishonin examines the content of the respective teachings, as well as people's practice and conduct based on those teachings. Because the three virtues are characteristics exhibited by Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and various honored ones in relation to the people, it goes without saying that gauging those who truly possess these three virtues becomes extremely important in terms of what the people are taught and the type of practice they are urged to carry out. Based on this analysis, Nichiren concludes that Shakyamuni alone embodies the three virtues, serving as sovereign, teacher, and parent for all living beings. In contrast, he argues, the honored ones and teachers of Confucianism in China and Brahmanism in India were ignorant of the principles of cause and effect. They didn't completely understand them. Therefore, they could not be regarded as genuinely possessing the virtues of sovereign, teacher, and parent. The opening of the eyes states, one should know that the world-honored one of great enlightenment, Shakyamuni Buddha, is the great leader for all living beings, a great eye for them, a great bridge, a great helmsman, a great field of good fortune. The four sages and three ascetics of the Confucian and Brahmanical scriptures and teachings are referred to as sages, but in fact they are no more than ordinary people who have not been able to eradicate the three categories of illusion. They are still in the realm of delusion. They are referred to as wise men, but in fact they are no more than infants who cannot understand the principle of cause and effect. They don't compare to Tentai or Dengyo even, is what he's saying. With their teachings for a ship, could one ever cross the sea of sufferings from birth and death? No, is the rhetorical answer to that. With their teachings for a bridge, could one ever escape from the maze of the six paths? No, the rhetorical answer to that. But the Buddha, our great teacher, has advanced beyond even transmigration with change and advance, let alone transmigration with differences and limitations. He has wiped out even the very root of fundamental darkness, let alone the illusions of thought and desire that are as minor as branches and leaves. By principles of cause and effect, the Daishonin is referring to the causality of life over the three existences of past, present, and future, and determines that determines human happiness. Our eternal true identity. Okay? Not the one that pops up every gathering of five components, right? Later, based on the five-fold comparison, he further clarifies the doctrine of original cause and original effect, which is the true causality of attaining Buddhahood. This is the doctrine of the true mutual possession of the 10 worlds and the true 3,000 realms in a single moment of life, hidden in the depths of the lotus of the lifespan, the 16th chapter of the essential teaching of the Lotus Sutra, the Buddhism of the sowing. In the first half of the opening of the eyes, the Daishonin concludes that in terms of the teachings of Confucianism, Brahmanism, and Buddhism that have been transmitted to Japan thus far, only Shakyamuni appears to fully function as sovereign teacher and parent to all living beings. And the Daishonin also clarifies in terms of Shakyamuni's entire body of teachings that the doctrine of 3,000 realms in a single moment of life, hidden in the depths of the Lotus Sutra, is the true teaching for attaining Buddhahood and the great law for liberating all people of the latter day from suffering. The reason he says Shakyamuni embodies all three virtues, sovereign, teacher, and parent, is that Shakyamuni became enlightened to the true causality of attaining Buddhahood, manifested it in his own life, and then expounded it in the form of the Lotus Sutra. And we'll continue with the practice of the votary of the Lotus Sutra, embodies the functions of sovereign, teacher, and parent. It's us also, page 19 when we come back next week. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.